now to show you once the activity checklist is complete, it's then time to do a stage gate assessment. So at this point, the user of the tool knows which stage gate they're eligible to be assessed against, and they would like to run the full stage gate assessment. So this can be done integrated with the rest of the suite of tools or not. So the user can run it in what we call standalone mode, where they just input all of their answers and run the stage gate design tool. Or they can use it in integrated mode, where the metrics and those evaluation areas like we showed before are calculated using the deployment and assessment tools. So when they go through this stage gate assessment, the questions they're asked can be both qualitative and quantitative. So it can be questions like, describe how your levelized cost of electricity is likely to decrease over time, or it could be quantitative, and that could be, what is your mean time to failure in hours? So both of those answers together, the quantitative with the justification in a qualitative way, bring together the stage gate assessment fully, and both are important parts to consider. You'll also see in the demo that the questions have different weightings, which are set out by the tool, and there's some guidance in terms of scoring criteria, and that's there to help the users of the tool complete their answers and understand what kind of answers, what kind of things they have to include in their answer, as well as it's if we're using it in assessor mode and as stage gates being assessed, it's guidance on how to score that question. So I'll pass you on to Ben, who'll go through the applicant mode stage gate assessment and go through a demonstration with you now.
Thanks, Jillian. So I'm going to jump back here and look at applicant mode, as Jillian has said. And I'll go into stage gate 2 to 3, which I haven't completed here. So if you use the applicant mode straight after the checklist, there will be a button on the checklist results page that will open the appropriate stage gate directly, but you can also go in and jump into any specific one if you want to, which is what I'm doing here. So if I go into stage gate 2 to 3, for instance, and you'll see a similar layout to before, but now it's question data split into qualitative questions first, followed by quantitative questions, which I'll show in a bit. I should have said at the start as well that this is an example in standalone mode. Jillian mentioned that you can run it in standalone or integrated with the other tools. I'm just going to quickly show standalone to show that's like, followed up by an example of using everything that's integrated together. So again, you can, whereas before we had activity categories, it is now broken down into question categories. So if we open up the technology question category, you get a brief synopsis of what is entailed in, or what is requested for in this category, followed by the actual questions that make up that category. So again, if we expand up a question, you get a description, a detailed description of the question, the weighting, which is the simple percentage weighting as Jillian described, and it can be multiple scoring criteria. It's just one in this case, detailing exactly what the assessor would be looking for in the applicant's answer to this particular question. So for each question, for each qualitative question, there is a box for the response. So again, the user will type in their response here, and you'll see that there's a character limit of 5,000 characters for each qualitative response, and this box will expand, or you can resize it yourself manually. As you type in responses, there's a similar live progress bar down at the bottom, which shows you how many total questions you've answered, the percentage of total questions, and broken down into qualitative and quantitative. So then that's just an example of a single qualitative question. If we move on to the next section, which is the quantitative questions, you'll get presented with a metrics table like this, which is the set of quantitative metrics that are defined for each stage gate. And in standalone mode, how the user would go about doing this is they'd expand each metric, and they'd have to, you can get a further description of the metric, they'd have to put in their result, and they have to put in a justification. So that's a justification for the inputs they've used, or the calculation methods, or the assumptions in their methods. And again, there's a character limit on that. And as the user types in the justification, the question is only considered complete when they've submitted both the result, a numerical number, as well as the justification. Just to go back a bit, you see that the metrics here, each metric has a name, a unit, the evaluation area, weighting. This example doesn't have any thresholds set. I can show one of them in a second, but yeah, you can also filter by evaluation area. So just show the acceptability metrics, for instance. Yeah, so that's standalone mode, and the user would have to go through each question in turn. At any stage, like in the checklist, they can save their progress and come back to it at a later stage. But now I'm just going to jump back a bit again and talk about an integrated example. So I'm going to close this StageGate tab and go back to the main module. So this is the main DTOceanPlus GUI, which deals with the configuration of all the interaction between the modules. So we showed it before, how you can use this checklist results to select complexity level. What I've done here is I've actually run the RAMS module, the reliability, availability, maintainability, and survivability module beforehand to get some results in there, as well as the ESA module, the environmental and social acceptance module. So just to show you what I mean by that, and I did this earlier, but if we open up the RAMS project that we used earlier, and we're on the outputs, so the results tab, and you'll see that there are results already in there. So some system reliability outputs already in there. So I won't show much more than that. There's some probability of failures. It's just to show you that I've run this before, and this has results saved in the RAMS module. Similarly for the ESA module. So then the thought process is that the user could use the checklist to create an entity in each module at the appropriate complexity level, run each of the modules and have the results saved. And then they could go back to the StageGate module by clicking this open button, and they go to the StageGate assessment applicant mode. And if we say, for example, StageGate 3 to 4, which doesn't have qualitative questions, sorry, but you will, and we go to the quantitative questions bit. So now we're in, it's a very similar screen, but we're actually in an integrated study. So that when the user can select this button, use the results from the integrated study from the deployment and assessment modules, it should load, and you'll see that the reliability and the ESA results have been loaded somewhere. Well, the RAMs have there. I'm not sure what's happened with the ESA. Something's happened there, but you see the RAM, it was populated with the result from the RAMs module. Okay, and now I'm just going to jump back very quickly again to show an example set of outputs. So we go back to this tutorial example and view the results. This is just a slightly nicer example because I've set thresholds in this one. So you get the response rate, which is the overall progress, the threshold success rate. So in this example, I set 3 thresholds, and this is just how many of them have passed and how many have failed. So you can also get the applicant answers reprinted again with the results with the response that the user has put in previously. And you can go through all the responses that have been given. And then for the quantitative results, you get an indication of which metrics have passed. And down at the bottom, just an example of one that's failed, and it's highlighted in red. So that's the applicant mode in a nutshell. And I'll hand back to Jonathan to discuss this again.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for that demonstration. And I'm going to, by way of using a real life example, I'm going to go back to Core Power Ocean and their wave energy technology development, but also perhaps I'll focus on our own experience at Wave Energy Scotland. Core Power internally use a stage-gated process, but also have been through the stages of the Wave Energy Scotland programme. So we've got some common experience there, but also other funders such as the European Commission that are looking at using a stage-gated or phase-gated funding scheme will perhaps use this type of evaluation using a DTOceanPlus toolset. Just go on to the next slide, please, Ben. So, and on 2 more slides, please, the other Core Power one. So what you have with DTOceanPlus in collaboration with the OES framework on the right-hand side is basically a common thread of assessment provided by the DTOceanPlus tools, so that 2 different technology developers or numerous technology developers can use exactly the same tools with exactly the same levels of complexity and present a common data set to a funder, and building on that fact that they have a common expectation with the funder of what activities should be done and what information should be presented. So that leads towards the concept, and I know in the OES, next stages of the OES work, the consortium intends to develop this idea, the idea of a technology passport, where a technology developer is able to move from one country's funding scheme to another. Both those countries' funding bodies have consistent expectations, and that technology developer can bring a consistent set of data. It's exactly what the funders are expecting. They know how it's been developed and they know where it's come from. And it's much easier for both technology developers to move and for funders to compare technologies and select which ones to fund. So that example kind of steps across between the worlds of the technology developer and the funder, because there's benefit for Core Power Ocean in that, in terms of clarity and awareness of where they need to go and what funding there is available to them. But also it improves and makes the process more efficient for funders. This ability to compare 2 or more technologies using a consistent method, consistent tools, and present a consistent output is really valuable. It helps to choose the right technologies, and it helps to ensure that those technologies go into the right stages of a funding scheme, don't progress too quickly or too slowly, and don't miss out some of the key technology development steps. So this link between the StageGate tool, the deployment and assessment tools which actually do the analysis, and the collaborations that are happening around the world. And the OES framework is not the only one of those, and we hope that framework will be taken up more and more by funders around the world. But some of the other innovation and technology development prioritization work that goes on around Europe and around the world are very important, and it's very important that tools like DTOceanPlus do align with those expectations of funders. So I think the key output for this stage of Ben's demonstration is this technology passport idea, and the ability to use the DTOceanPlus tools as a whole suite to present that pack, which helps people develop their technology, and it also helps them present their technology to others.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, the technology passport is a really interesting idea, and I'm sure we can all see the benefit of that. And something else, you were talking about the link between technology developers and funders, and something else we've been talking about recently is with certification bodies. And so if the StageGate design tool could also be used as a way of checking off that your technology development has been done consistently, and then would be ready for certification as a sort of pre-certification. So that's something we've been talking about in DTOceanPlus with Bureau Veritas at the moment. But yeah, both I think we can see the value of both of those ideas. Okay, so we're going to move on to the third feature that we'd like to talk about in the StageGate design tool, which is the improvement areas. So essentially, this is a way of highlighting to the user of the tool where they should focus their efforts and which evaluation areas could use more attention in order for them to be ready for the next stage. So how this is done is that if the user has completed their activity checklist, like you saw, they've been completed applicant mode of their assessment, and if it's already been assessed in assessor mode. So if those 3 things have been complete, then these can be brought together and turned into a score, which shows the user, here's an area that you could be working on. So we haven't talked much about assessor modes because we're not going to focus on it too much today, but just in a nutshell, it's essentially where the completed application is passed to an assessor, which could be like Wave Energy Scotland, and they use the scoring criteria in order to mark off and assess the applications.